Not a hot streak. Not a lucky run. Not a stretch of favorable matchups and soft schedules that inflates a record temporarily before reality comes crashing back in. What does it look like when a team, built deliberately, constructed with surgical precision, loaded with talent at every single layer, decides that winning is not a goal but a standard? It looks exactly like what the Los Angeles Dodgers are doing right now. And at the center of all of it, as he has been all season, as he seemingly always is in the moments that matter most, stands Shohei Ohtani. Calm. Focused. Inevitable. The Grand Slam was the headline. But the real story started long before that ball left the yard. It started with a streak that most fans haven't fully appreciated yet, and when you understand what that streak actually means, the Grand Slam stops feeling like a highlight and starts feeling like something that was always going to happen. Before we talk about the Grand Slam, we need to talk about the on-base streak. Because this is where the real story lives. Getting on base consistently in Major League Baseball is genuinely one of the hardest things a human being can do in professional sport. You are facing pitchers who have spent their entire lives, from little league fields to college programs to minor league development systems, learning how to prevent exactly that outcome. Their entire professional purpose is to get you out. And they are very, very good at it. Ohtani's on-base streak entering this game was the kind of number that makes opposing pitching coaches stop mid-sentence during their pre-game meetings and stare at the data one more time, as if looking at it again will somehow make it feel less impossible. It didn't. What makes this streak particularly extraordinary is not just its length, it is its consistency across context. Ohtani has been getting on base against lefties and righties. Against power pitchers and crafty veterans. In pitcher-friendly parks and hitter-friendly ones. In high-leverage situations with the game on the line and in low-leverage situations where lesser players mentally check out. He doesn't check out. He never checks out. That is perhaps the most defining characteristic of his entire approach to the game, the absolute refusal to treat any plate appearance as less important than any other. Every at-bat is prepared for with the same level of seriousness. Every pitcher is studied with the same level of detail. Every pitch sequence is processed with the same level of focus. That is not a natural gift. That is a constructed discipline. And it is what has produced one of the most remarkable on-base streaks the sport has seen in recent memory. Now let's talk about the moment itself. The bases were loaded. The Dodgers needed a run, not just for the lead, but for the kind of breathing room that changes how a pitching staff manages the rest of a game. One run gives you something to protect. 3 or 4 runs give you the ability to attack. Ohtani stepped to the plate carrying everything, the streak, the moment, the weight of 50,000 people in that stadium and millions more watching at home who understood exactly what was at stake. And here is what makes Ohtani different from almost every other hitter who has ever stood in that situation. He wasn't thinking about the moment. He was thinking about the pitch. There is a fundamental difference between those two things that separates good hitters from historically great ones. Most hitters, when the bases are loaded and the game hangs in the balance, feel the weight of the situation pressing down on their mechanics. Their hands tighten slightly. Their load timing shifts. Their eye level rises just a fraction, away from the ball and toward the consequences of missing it. Ohtani has trained himself, through years of obsessive preparation, through a mental discipline that those who have been around him describe as almost unsettling in its completeness, to narrow his entire consciousness down to one thing in that moment. The ball coming out of the pitcher's hand. Nothing else exists. Not the crowd. Not the score. Not the streak. Not the cameras. Just the ball, the zone, and the decision that has to be made in a fraction of a second that most people cannot even perceive. When the pitch came, a fastball that caught slightly too much of the plate, the kind of mistake that pitchers make when the pressure of the situation affects their execution just as much as it affects hitters, Ohtani's decision was already made before most people in the stadium had fully processed that the ball had been released. The swing was not violent. It was not desperate. It was simply correct. And the ball traveled to a place where no outfielder on earth could have reached it. Grand slam. Dodgers lead. Stadium erupting. But here is what separates a great individual moment from a truly great team performance. Ohtani gave the Dodgers the lead. What happened next determined whether that lead would mean anything. Yoshinobu Yamamoto took the mound carrying the kind of quiet intensity that has become his signature in a Dodgers uniform. If Ohtani represents the offensive standard that this Dodgers team has set for itself, Yamamoto represents the pitching standard, and on this night, he was absolutely relentless in defending the lead that his teammate had just provided. Yamamoto's performance was a masterclass in what elite pitching actually looks like when it is operating at its highest level. It was not simply about velocity, though his stuff was sharp. It was not simply about movement, though his pitches moved with the kind of precision that hitters describe as genuinely disorienting. It was about sequencing, the chess match that a great pitcher plays across 9 innings, always thinking multiple batters ahead, setting up pitches in the second inning that will create the strikeout in the 6th. Inning after inning, Yamamoto worked through the opposing lineup with the methodical efficiency of someone who had studied this specific group of hitters extensively and arrived at the ballpark with a clear, detailed plan that he was executing pitch by pitch. The opposing batters were not simply getting out. They were getting out in the ways Yamamoto had designed for them to get out. And there is a significant difference between those two things. One is a result, and the other is a demonstration of complete mastery. When Yamamoto recorded the final out to secure the win, the number in the win column went up by 1. But what he had actually delivered was something larger than a single victory. He had demonstrated, again, that the Dodgers pitching can match the standard that their offense sets. That combination is what makes this team genuinely dangerous. Let's put this winning streak in its proper context. Winning consecutive games in Major League Baseball requires a specific kind of organizational alignment that most teams achieve only briefly, if at all, during a full season. Your starting pitching has to hold. Your bullpen has to convert. Your offense has to produce runs in the moments that matter. Your defense has to eliminate the mistakes that allow unearned runs to change the complexion of games. All of those elements have to synchronize, not perfectly, but consistently enough that when one area struggles on a given night, another area compensates. The Dodgers' winning streak is a demonstration of that synchronization operating at a remarkably high level. There have been nights during this run where the offense carried the pitching. There have been nights where the pitching carried the offense. There have been nights where the bullpen was asked to do more than anyone would have preferred and delivered anyway. What has not happened, what has been the defining characteristic of this streak, is a night where multiple elements failed simultaneously. That is not an accident. That is the product of organizational depth, roster construction, and a clubhouse culture that refuses to allow one bad performance to become 2. Ohtani's grand slam and Yamamoto's shutdown performance on this particular night were the latest expression of that culture. Different players. Different roles. Same standard. Here is what this game, and this streak, should make every baseball fan genuinely appreciate. The grand slam will be the clip that gets replayed. Ohtani's name will be in the headlines. The highlights will dominate social media timelines and sports broadcasts through the night and into the following morning. But the on-base streak that loaded the bases for that grand slam was built at-bat by at-bat, day by day, through a level of preparation and focus that most people never see and the highlight reel never captures. And Yamamoto's win, the innings pitched, the pitches sequenced, the batters retired in the exact ways the game plan required, will fade from public memory far faster than the grand slam, even though one could not have mattered without the other. This is the real story of what the Dodgers are building right now. Not just spectacular individual moments. Not just one transcendent player doing transcendent things. A team that has internalized the same standard. That shows up every night with the same preparation. That refuses to allow the ordinary pressures of a long baseball season to lower the level at which they compete. Ohtani on base. Ohtani swinging. The ball leaving the park. Yamamoto on the mound. The lead protected. The streak extended. That is not a highlight. That is a habit. And habits, when they are built this deeply into a team's identity, are very, very hard to break.